A sample roaster is the second most important tool in a coffee roastery. But meanwhile, there are so many machines in the market that it's sometimes hard to figure out which one might be the best one for you. And this is why we have a close look on sample roasting, different functions of sample roasting, the requirements on the machine, but also at some of the most popular sample roasters in the market in this video. I'm Ingo from Roast Rebels, and this channel is all about coffee roasting. So before we have a close look at the detailed machine, I want to clarify some points when it comes to sample roasting, because I realize that people have different ideas about sample roasting. When people are talking about sample roasting, then they have usually two things in mind. One is getting information about a particular green coffee bean, and the other one is getting information about a bean to develop a profile for their production roasting. I would actually, to be clear in terminology, differentiate both of them. So for me, the evaluation of a green coffee bean is the classical sample roasting, and the other one, so the developing of roasting profile for a production roasting, is something that I call profile roasting. Let's have a look at both of them now. Sample roasting is one of the most important jobs in a coffee roastery, because the choice of green coffee beans is the most important decisions for your product development. It's the aspect that has the highest influence on the taste of the beverage that you are going to create, and therefore testing different green coffee beans and then also doing quality control on the coffee beans that you have in stock is one of the most important jobs of a coffee roaster. But beside coffee roasteries, sample roasting is also one of the main jobs of a green coffee trader, because on one hand, they have to evaluate green coffee beans to decide which beans they are taking in their assortment. And in addition to that, they have various samples that they are roasting and evaluating during the lifespan of a green coffee bean. So especially during transportation, pre-shipment, and then also in the warehouse, but also in the quality control of a green coffee bean that is in the warehouse, so that they can make sure they have a good quality and also the expected quality of the green coffee bean in their assortment. And in addition to that, there are also some customers that are asking for roasted samples. And here, of course, the better you're roasting a sample that you are shipping out, the higher the chances that the person is going to buy this coffee and also giving you a good price for this coffee. And related to that, sample roasting is also super important for coffee producers, because they need to know what they are creating, and then also need to understand which quality they are creating, because if they can sell their quality to a roastery or a green coffee buyer by creating good samples, then they have a higher chance to get a better price for the product they are creating. Usually in sample roasting, you get small amounts of samples. So samples are usually between 50 and 200 grams. Typically, it's 100 grams that you get, and therefore you have just one chance to roast this sample, and it has to be roasted in a quality that is good enough to give you information about whether you're going to buy this coffee and which kind of beverage you are going to create with this coffee. In addition to that, you need to roast these samples in a way that they are consistent, so that you can compare samples and that you don't have an influence of the roasting procedure. Usually you're roasting these coffees to a light roasting degree, so that you don't get roasty flavors, but have enough information about the terroir. And then you need to interpret a sample and think about what's in it, if it's roasting to a roasting degree that you're looking for. So for example, a darker roasting degree, or a particular beverage like a cold brew or an espresso or a cappuccino, or whatever you want to use this bean for. To achieve that, sample roasters for green coffee evaluating have some particular requirements, and one of the most important requirements is that it can roast small amount of coffee to a really high quality, and that you have a consistent roast, and therefore also a very good control when you're roasting this small amount of green coffee beans. Especially if you're roasting a lot of samples, then it's also important to have a look at the workflow of the machine, because some of these machines have a very productive and efficient workflow that allows you to spend time for other things while you're doing the roast, and also to roast a lot of samples in a row. But this is only important if you have a high number of samples. If not, if you're just roasting green coffee beans from time to time, then you can compromise on this aspect a little bit. And another particular aspect is if you want to use this machine for traveling. Some people are taking their sample roasters to their travels if they are going to origins And then they need a machine that is mobile, that they can take with them, that they can use anywhere. And also, if possible, a machine that is giving you consistent results no matter where you are, in which environment that you're working with the machine. And some sample roasters are really then meeting these requirements specifically. But now let's have a look at the other aspect about the profile roasting. When it comes to profile roasting, then you usually have already decided for a green coffee bean, and now you want to know how you roast this coffee to get the best out of this bean. It's not that you can translate a roasting profile from a sample roaster directly to a production roaster, but you still get enough information that you can use to then translate a profile from one roaster to the other one. And these aspects are in particular the choice of the green coffee bean, then also the roasting degree, so how light or dark you're going to roast it. That is actually the aspect that has the highest influence on the taste when it comes to roasting, but also the length of your roast, if you do a faster, shorter roast or a bit a longer roast, in particular then also how these phases are, so how long or short is the development phase and what is the temperature increase from the first crack to the end of the roast. All this information help you then to create a nice roasting profile that you can use on your production roaster for this particular bean. Since you already have the coffee in stock and you don't have this really small amount of green coffee beans, the minimum capacity here on these machines is not super critical as it is, for example, in this classic sample roasting for evaluating green coffee beans. The requirements of a profile roaster are that they are super precise to control, that you can really fine-graded work on the profiles, that you can do different profiles, and that you can also then really well measure the temperature curve so that it has a really precise measurement of the curves, and also a software where you are recording it so that you then are developing profiles that you can really compare and decide for one that you're going to take to your production roaster. In a perfect world, this small profile roaster is similar to the large production roaster in construction, so that you have a similar thermodynamics, that you have similar settings and a similar way of measuring the temperature. So these are the most important requirements on a sample roaster, and now it's up to you to decide which of these requirements are most important for you in your operations. And in the next step, we are going to have a look at some roasting machines so that you get an idea what is out there and which one might be the perfect machine for you. By the way, if this is something for you, then make sure you subscribe our channel, because we are producing a lot of videos on roasting and roasting machines now and also in the future. But now let's go and have a look at the different roasting machines for sample roasting. The one that you can see on the picture is a so-called barrel roaster. This has been the industry standard for decades, and it's a very easy to use roasting machine. You have a drum where you put in the green beans. When it's roasted, you put them upside down and the beans are being fallen out and being cooled. That's very simple to use, and it's a very productive way of roasting samples. And very often, as you can see on these pictures, there are many of these barrels in a sample roaster, so that you can then really efficiently roast a lot of samples. If you have a big cupping with a lot of samples coming in, you have a super efficient workflow and you can really roast a lot of samples with them. But on the other hand, these machines are really heavy, they are very expensive, and they're not super precise when it comes to profiles. A lot of people manage to do really nice samples on them, but it's really hard to replicate them and to control precisely a roasting profile, and also they were not super consistent. And then with the uprise of home roasting, there have been more and more small, very precise roasting machines on the market that are perfect for sample roasting. And nowadays, mostly these kind of machines are being used for sample roasting. And here is one of these machines. This is the Kaffelogic Nano 7. And like most of those small sample roaster, it's based on the so-called fluid bed technology. That means the beans are being roasted in a hot air stream. It has a very small roasting chamber, and therefore you can roast between 50 and 200 grams of samples. It's super precise. It has an open thermosensor, which is then really precisely measuring the temperature, and the control is very fine. You draw a temperature curve and the machine is working its way along this curve, and is then also taking out any influences from the environment. These machines are very light, you can take them anywhere, and they're quite cheap, so they're very popular as sample roasters. When it comes to profile roasting, then you have to understand that the curve is not directly comparable to a drum roasting machine, it is a little bit different. Still, you get a lot of information that you can then apply on your production roaster, like, for example, the length of the roast, the color of the roasted bean, the roast development time and the roast development time ratio, as well as the temperature increase from first crack to the end of the roast. What you usually do with this kind of roasters is that you have one cupping profile, or you have a handful of profiles, for example, for washed, natural or anaerobic coffees, and then you roast all the samples the same so that they are comparable. And when you're at the cupping table, you then translate and interpret the samples in a way so that you understand what could be in this coffee for a cappuccino, for example, for an espresso or for a filter coffee. But now, since some years, there is a machine on the market which is actually providing perfect roasting profiles for each beans so that they can roast then every single bean to its perfection, and this is the Nucleus Link. As you can see, it's the same hardware as the Kaffelogic Nano 7, but it comes with more than 900 roasting profiles. This has been developed by the team of Nucleus Coffee Tools, and this is actually the same team that is behind Ona Coffee or Project Origin. These are people that are most of the time in their year in the fields. They are traveling, they are going to different coffee producers, they are cupping a lot of samples there. They're testing a lot of green coffees, and they're super experienced with sampling, but also with all the problems or all the questions that are behind sample roasting, and try to develop the perfect roasting machine for coffee samples. And as said, this machine comes with more than 900 roasting profiles, and then you categorize each bean according to its density, but also to its processing, so that you get a perfect roasting profile for each single bean and get the best expression out of each bean, so that you don't have to interpret anymore what could be inside of a particular bean. And even more so, if you, for example, a coffee producer or a coffee trader, then you can directly roast the perfect sample and get actually a better quality of the roasted sample that you provide to a potential customer than with any other sample roasting machine. And what's even more, those profiles are categorized in different characteristics. So you have different filter profiles, you have different espresso profiles for lighter espresso, for darker espresso, omni coffee, cupping, and like that you can now roast each sample according to the beverage that you want to later produce with that bean. And what I also particularly like about this machine is that it's perfect for traveling and going to coffee origins. It's coming on one hand with a strong case that you can take on travels, but even more so, it has a function that you can calibrate the machine to the location where you're currently at. The problem is, if you're at different locations, then the roasting profile would be different. So the coffee would taste differently if you roast it at 2000 meters or at 500 meters above sea level. And this machine can be calibrated to your location so that the roasting tastes the same no matter where you are roasting the beans. If you're in the field, in Kenya or Honduras, for example, or back then in your roastery or in your coffee trading office. Also, what's nice about the profiles here is that they can be cupped directly out of the machine. Usually in a perfect world, you wait for a couple of days to degas your coffee, but if you're in a hurry and want to decide now which coffees to take, you can very well cup the coffee directly out of the machine. The Nucleus Link is only in the market since a couple of years, but is meanwhile one of the most popular sample roasters, or maybe even the most popular sample roasting machines on the market. And even more so, it's very popular in the competition scenes, where there are small lots of coffee that have to be roasted to perfection. So for example, the current World Brewers Cup champion, Martin Wölfel, or many other competitors have been roasting their coffee on this machine, because the roasting profiles that are provided with this machine are so good that you can, as said, even win world championship titles with this machine. Another very popular sample roaster is the ROEST Sample Roaster, especially interesting if you want to roast a lot of samples. The ROEST is a super innovative machine packed with sensors that allows you a fully automated workflow. So it follows a roasting profile curve, but also it has a microphone that detects the first crack and then marks the first crack on the curve, and then calculates the development of the bean, so that at the end you get a super nice consistency from sample to sample, and that you can compare then all the samples on the cupping table very evenly. In addition to that, it's super productive. While one roast is cooling, you can already start the next one. And as said, you just start the roast and then the machine does everything itself. This takes a lot of work from your shoulders so that you can do something else during this time. And in addition to that, the amount of sensors and the amount of information that you get out of this machine supports you in developing roasting profiles for your production roaster. That is why the ROEST is not only popular with green coffee traders who are roasting a lot of samples, but also with roasteries that are developing roasting profiles on the machine besides of evaluating samples. And in addition to that, it's also very popular in the competition scene like the Link or the Kaffelogic Nano, because there you have small amount of beans that you have to roast to perfection. If you are looking for a machine to develop profiles, to learn the craft of coffee roasting, but also to roast nanolots, then the Aillio Bullet is a very popular machine. The Aillio Bullet is the small version of a drum roasting machine, so it has the same thermodynamics, it has the same settings as a big roaster, so you are controlling the amount of heat that goes into the system, the airflow, as well as the drum speed. And also it has the same way of measuring the temperature by a classic bean probe. In addition to that, it also has an infrared sensor built in. If you're particularly looking for a sample roaster to evaluate green coffee beans, then the Aillio Bullet is not the right machine, because it really starts to measure well at about 150 to 200 grams of beans, while usually you get a set 50 or 100 gram sample of green coffee beans. Nevertheless, if you already have this machine with you, then you can of course also use it to roast small samples, particularly by using the built-in IBTS sensor. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you want to know more about the detailed machines, then have a look at the videos we did for each single of these machines in this channel as well. You find the link down in the description. If you have another question about sample roasting or coffee roasting in general, then always come back to me. You find my contact on roastery.com.